Novel, The Pit Below Her Room. Author, Frank Parwaz. Chapter 1. The trapdoor. Claire Matthews didn't notice the cold spot the first night. She was too busy ignoring the mildew stench that clung to the hallway like old grief. Too busy pretending she didn't hear the soft scratch of mice in the walls. It was the price of starting over. And starting over always cost something. Emily fell asleep curled in her new bed before Claire even finished unpacking the boxes marked Emily's room. Toys. She found her daughter like that, buried under a blanket with one arm draped off the mattress, fingers brushing the floorboards. The window rattled in its frame. Claire knelt, tucking the little hand back under the blanket, then paused when she felt it, a strange chill against her palm, seeping up through the wooden floor. She pulled back the rug. Nothing, just old, warped planks that hadn't seen polish in decades. Maybe it was the draft through the rotting walls. Maybe it was the ache in her bones that hadn't gone away since the divorce. Claire shook it off. She kissed Emily's forehead and whispered, "Sweet dreams, baby," though her voice cracked on dreams. Downstairs, Claire poured herself half a glass of the cheap boxed wine she'd picked up at the town's only grocery store. She drank it standing at the sink, staring out at the flat, moonlit yard that surrounded the farmhouse like a moat of dead grass. Somewhere out there, frogs croaked in the drainage ditch. The nearest neighbor's light was a single pinprick far across the field. Alone. But safe. That's what she told herself. The second night, she heard the floorboards creak. Claire jolted awake, the house so quiet she could hear her own breath. A hush like something waiting. Then a voice, soft, high. Emily's voice. She found her daughter standing beside the bed, staring at the wall. Her eyes were wide open but empty, pupils huge in the thin moonlight. Claire whispered her name, but Emily didn't blink until Claire touched her shoulder. Then Emily gasped, sucked in a sharp breath, and pressed her face into her mother's nightgown like she was 6 months old again. "What were you doing, Em?" Emily's voice was muffled. "Listening." Listening to what? A pause. Emily lifted her face, frowning at the shadows behind Claire. The floor was talking. On the third night, Claire found the trapdoor. She was on her hands and knees in Emily's room, hunting for the source of the draft. The cold air poured out from under the rug no matter how she adjusted the heater. She peeled the rug back, revealing not just the warped planks but a seam she hadn't seen before, a faint outline of a square, half hidden by layers of old stain and dust. She tapped it with her knuckles. Hollow. She didn't want to open it. The thought crawled up her neck like a spider. But she fetched a screwdriver from the kitchen anyway and wedged it under the edge. The wood gave way with a groan, the hinges older than the house itself. A black hole yawned beneath her daughter's bed. Not a root cellar, not a crawl space, just a pit that breathed a slow, damp breath up into her face. Claire swallowed back the urge to gag. The air smelled of earth and iron, but deeper too, like wet fur. She leaned over the opening, squinting into the darkness. No ladder. No steps. The beam from her phone's flashlight cut down only a few feet before the dark seemed to bend it, swallowing the light whole. Something moved far below, a shifting in the black that made her stomach drop. But when she blinked, there was nothing. She slammed the trapdoor shut and dragged Emily's dresser over it. When Emily asked the next morning why her dresser was blocking her bed, Claire said it was just to keep the cold out. Emily didn't argue. She just looked at her mother for a long moment, too long, then smiled. "He says thank you, Mommy." Claire didn't ask who he was. She just hugged her daughter tight enough to make her squirm. Chapter 2. The whispers. Claire started sleeping with her bedroom door open. She told herself it was so she'd hear Emily if she woke in the night, but the truth was, the silence of this old house frightened her more than any footsteps. Every creak and groan felt aware now, as if the house shifted when she turned her back. Some nights, she found herself hovering in the hallway outside Emily's room, listening for her daughter's breathing just to reassure herself that Emily was still there, warm, alive, hers. On Wednesday, the school called. Emily had spent recess standing in the far corner of the playground, her nose nearly touching the fence, mumbling to herself. When her teacher asked what she was saying, Emily just smiled and said, "Practicing." Practicing for what? Emily wouldn't say. She just drew pictures, thick black crayon lines swirling into jagged mouths, stick figures standing at the edge of pits that opened like wounds in the ground. Claire tacked the drawings to the fridge because throwing them away felt wrong somehow, as if the pictures might crawl back out of the trash when she wasn't looking. That night, the draft was stronger than ever. Claire could feel it seeping under the dresser when she stepped into Emily's room to check on her. The child was curled on top of the blanket now, not under it, as if she'd been listening at the floor again. Her mouth moved in sleep, tiny murmurs that turned Claire's stomach inside out. Claire nudged her awake. Emily blinked at her, dazed. "Honey, you can't sleep on the floor like this. You'll get sick." Emily tilted her head, the way she did when she was working out a riddle. "It's not cold down there. He keeps me warm." Claire tucked her in tighter than before, forcing a smile she couldn't hold. When she called the realtor the next morning, she kept her voice steady. "Did you know about a cellar under the house?" There was a pause on the line. Then the realtor cleared her throat and said she'd check the old records, but that properties had additions over the years. She didn't elaborate. Claire thought about calling a handyman, someone to come and seal the trapdoor shut. But each time she pictured a stranger in Emily's room, heavy boots on the creaking boards, opening that darkness again, she stopped herself. Some things were better left closed. Friday night brought the first real snow. Claire sat by the living room window with her laptop, half-finished job applications open but ignored. Outside, the wind rattled the porch light until it flickered like a dying star. She thought she heard Emily's voice drifting down the stairs, a sing-song murmur, half a lullaby, half a hush-hush-hush. Claire climbed the steps slowly, the wood cold under her bare feet. Emily's bedroom door was cracked open. The draft pulsed against her shins, carrying with it a smell that turned her mouth dry. Old earth, wet stone, something animal. Inside, Emily knelt on the floor in her nightgown, the dresser pushed halfway aside. Her small hands were on the trapdoor, palms flat, as if feeling a heartbeat through the wood. Claire grabbed her up so fast Emily squeaked in surprise. The girl's face buried in her shoulder, hair smelling of dust and baby shampoo. "You can't open that, Emily. You hear me? Never open that." Emily's voice was muffled against her skin. "He's hungry, Mommy." Claire's knees nearly gave out. Who's hungry?" Emily didn't answer. She just lifted her head, eyes huge and innocent, and whispered, "He said you know his name." Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table, the wind howling outside, her phone screen glaring white with search results she couldn't bring herself to read. Old farmhouse disappearances. Local legends. Missing children. Folklore. The thing below. She didn't notice when her glass of water froze solid beside her elbow. She didn't see Emily standing at the top of the stairs, watching her mother from the dark, tiny fingers curled tight around the banister. Chapter 3. The visitor on Saturday morning. The snow lay heavy and wet against the farmhouse windows, a muffled hush that made Claire feel like the whole world had gone still just to listen. She was so tired she could taste metal in her mouth. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the old clock on the wall, scraped at her nerves like fingernails on glass. Emily sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs under her chair, humming to herself as she pushed dry Cheerios around her bowl with one finger. Claire couldn't remember when her daughter had last eaten properly, or when she had. It was the knock at the door that startled her upright, a sharp, deliberate rap that echoed through the hollow house. Claire nearly tripped over the half-open boxes still stacked in the hall as she made her way to the front door. On the porch stood an old woman hunched against the snow, bundled in a faded brown coat that looked older than the farmhouse itself. Her hair was wild and grey, blowing around her face like smoke. Her eyes, sharp, too sharp, flicked past Claire's shoulder into the dim hallway. "Mrs. Matthews," the old woman said. Her voice was rough but clear. "Name's Pritchard. I live over yonder." She gestured with a gloved hand somewhere across the frozen fields. Claire forced a polite smile. "Hello. Can I help you?" Mrs. Pritchard sniffed the air, her nose wrinkling. "You got a child, don't you?" Claire's smile froze. "Yes. Why?" Mrs. Pritchard's eyes darted again to the stairs behind Claire. "Don't let her listen at the floor. That's where it starts." Claire stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind her until it was just a crack, enough to keep Emily from hearing. The cold bit at her bare arms. "What do you mean?" Claire hissed. "Listen to what?" Mrs. Pritchard looked her up and down as if weighing her. "How old's the girl?" 7. What does that have to do with? 7's old enough for him to notice. Mrs. Pritchard's voice dropped to a whisper, the wind carrying her words like a secret. Asterisk, that hole beneath the bedroom. It's older than this house. Older than this land. The folks who built here knew better than to stay. They boarded it up, moved on, let it sleep. But sometimes the wood rots. Sometimes it remembers how to talk. Claire felt a cold knot tighten in her throat. "What is it?" The old woman's eyes went glassy, distant. "Hunger, some say. A mouth that never closes. The first ones called it the hollow guest. Called it company for lonely souls. But it don't keep you company. It eats what you give it, and then it asks for more." Claire shook her head. "No. That's folklore, old wives' tales." Mrs. Pritchard's breath frosted between them. "And yet you're out here freezing while your little girl listens to him whisper her name, ain't you?" The wind gusted. Claire grabbed the porch rail to steady herself. "How do I stop it?" Mrs. Pritchard leaned closer. Claire could smell the wood smoke on her coat, the faint sharpness of old sweat and earth. "You don't stop it. You move. You run. Burn the floor, salt the earth, pray it don't follow. But you got nowhere else to go, do you?" Claire swallowed. Her eyes burned. "I can protect her." Mrs. Pritchard snorted. "Best pray you can protect yourself. That thing loves a desperate mother. Loves what you'll give it if you're scared enough." Claire's voice rose. "I would never hurt my daughter." The old woman didn't flinch. She just fixed Claire with a look so pitying it made her knees buckle. "You won't have to, honey. That's the trick. It makes you think you're saving her." Inside, the door creaked open wider. Emily stood in the gap, hair tangled from sleep, eyes too old for her small face. "Mommy," she called, voice small but clear. "Is she telling you about my friend?" Mrs. Pritchard stared at the girl, lips pressed so tight they went white. "You listen to me, Claire Matthews. Don't let that child talk to him alone. Not even in her dreams." Emily tilted her head, that same slow tilt that made Claire's stomach twist. Asterisk, "He says you're not invited," Emily said softly. Mrs. Pritchard hissed through her teeth and backed off the porch step like she'd been struck. Claire turned to her daughter, trying to force warmth into her voice that wasn't there. Asterisk, "Go inside, Em. Mommy's coming." Emily smiled. The trapdoor draft brushed past Claire's ankles, colder than the snow. Mrs. Pritchard was already shuffling back down the drive, muttering to herself, crossing herself with trembling hands. Claire pulled Emily close, but her daughter slipped away, drifting back into the hallway, bare feet silent on the wood. In the distance, the neighbor's silhouette vanished into the white fields, a bent shape that would not come back. Behind Claire, the floorboards under Emily's room creaked like old jaws opening wide. Chapter 4. The first gift. Claire didn't sleep after Mrs. Pritchard left. She sat at the kitchen table again, a half-drunk cup of cold coffee sweating beside her elbow. She'd piled Emily's drawings in front of her, black spirals, deep pits, eyes floating in the dark, trying to read them like a language she'd never learned. Emily was still asleep upstairs. Or maybe she wasn't. Maybe she was lying awake in the dark, listening to the voice beneath her bed, the same voice that now curled around Claire's thoughts like smoke. She caught herself staring at the trapdoor in her mind's eye, the way the wood pulsed faintly when she found it the first time, the way the drafted teeth when it brushed her skin. She told herself it was just a hole in the floor. Just air and rot. But her heart wouldn't listen. By morning, the house was deathly silent. Claire made Emily pancakes, piled high with the last of the maple syrup they'd brought from their old apartment. Emily picked at them with her fork but didn't eat. Instead, she watched the hallway, eyes flicking every few seconds toward the stairs. "Emily, honey," Claire said, trying to sound normal. "Are you feeling okay?" Emily didn't look at her. "He's hungry." Claire's hand jerked, knocking her mug to the floor. The coffee spread in a brown puddle at her feet. She cleaned it up in a daze, scrubbing the sticky stain until her knuckles ached. When she looked up, Emily had slipped away, the pancake still untouched, a perfect circle of uneaten comfort. She found her daughter upstairs, kneeling by the dresser again. The pit's draft hissed through the small gap Emily had pried open. A single candle flickered beside her. Claire didn't know where she'd found it. The flame bent toward the hole in the floor like it was being sucked down. In Emily's hands was a small bundle wrapped in tissue, her stuffed rabbit, worn and grey, ear half-chewed from toddler days. Claire's heart lurched. "What are you doing?" Claire asked, her voice sharp enough to make Emily flinch. Emily hugged the rabbit tight to her chest. "He wants something soft. He promised if I feed him, he'll stay happy." Claire crossed the room in 2 steps, snatching the rabbit away. "No. This is yours. He doesn't get this." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but her mouth stayed flat, hard. "He's hungry, Mommy. He says if I'm a good girl, you'll stay forever." Claire knelt, gripping her daughter's shoulders. "Listen to me. You don't feed him anything. Not a toy, not your voice, not your dreams. Do you hear me?" Emily blinked slowly, like she was listening to someone else, someone just behind Claire's shoulder. Then she looked at her mother with eyes that were too old, too tired. "But you said we'd stay here forever." That night, the pit took something anyway. Claire heard the scraping in the walls around midnight, sharp claws scratching behind the baseboards. She froze in bed, listening as the noise skidded down the hallway and into Emily's room. She bolted upright, heart hammering, but forced herself to wait, to listen. The scratching paused. Silence. Then a faint, wet crunch. Claire found the courage to stand. She crept to Emily's doorway. The trapdoor was open wide. Emily was asleep in her bed, her face peaceful. The candle still flickered on the floorboards, the draft swirling around it like breath. Beside the hole lay a single, limp shape. A mouse, its fur matted, eyes gone. Something in the pit below shifted, a slithering sound that made Claire's teeth ache. She wanted to slam the trapdoor shut. Nail it. Salt it. Burn it. Instead she backed away, pressing a fist to her mouth to hold and scream. She dreamed of the pit that night, or maybe she didn't dream at all. Maybe it was real, the blackness crawling up her legs, seeping into her mouth like oil. A voice whispered to her from beneath the boards, soft as Emily's lullabies. "Feed me," it said. "Feed me and she will never leave you." Claire woke with the taste of dirt on her tongue. Her pillow was damp where she drooled in her sleep, her hair tangled like roots. In the silence, she heard Emily giggle from her room, a small, secret laugh she hadn't heard in months. Claire dragged herself up, bones heavy as stone, and crossed the hall. Emily sat at the edge of the bed, legs dangling over the trapdoor, humming to herself. In her lap was the rabbit, whole, unharmed, but its button eyes were turned down, facing the darkness below. When Claire stepped inside, Emily looked up at her, smiling a smile that made Claire's skin crawl. "He says you'll feed him next, Mommy." Chapter 5. Hunger Stories. Claire waited until Emily was at school. She watched the yellow bus vanish down the long road through the frozen fields, Emily's small face pressed to the window, hand lifted in a half-wave that seemed to linger long after the bus turned the corner. When the house was empty and silent again, Claire stood at the foot of the stairs for a long time, keys clenched in her hand. She could just leave, right now. Walk out the door, drive until the road ran out. Take Emily far from here, never look back. but her feet move her upward, step by step, drawn like a hooked fish. The cold spot under Emily's bed waited for her like a held breath. She shoved the dresser aside and ripped the trapdoor open. The draft hit her in the face, sharp and sour, smelling like something freshly turned from the earth. She knelt on the edge and stared into it, a black so deep it seemed to move, as if it was alive and watching her back. Somewhere below, something shifted. A ripple of air, like a sigh. Claire forced her hands to move. She'd brought nails, a hammer, a whole roll of duct tape. Ridiculous, but it felt like armor. She braced the trapdoor, trying to jam the swollen wood back into place, hammering bent nails into splintered boards. The pit breathed. That was the only word for it. The air pulsed against her knuckles, hot then cold, smelling faintly sweet, like rotting fruit left in sun. She nailed the edges until her hands blistered. Each strike of the hammer echoed down into the dark, and sometimes she swore something laughed back, a dry hiss that shivered through the floor. When she finished, Claire sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her face. The trapdoor was sealed, crude, ugly, but sealed. She told herself it would hold. She had to believe it. That night, the dreams came back. Worse. She was standing in her old kitchen, the one she'd left behind with her marriage. Her husband's boots were by the door, muddy, massive, waiting to stomp through her clean floors. She could hear him in the next room, the low rumble of his voice a threat wrapped in a drawl. Emily was crying somewhere. She always was. Claire wanted to go to her, to lift her up and carry her out the door, but her legs wouldn't move. The walls shifted. The floor split at her feet, not floorboards anymore, but black, yawning, swallowing the old linoleum. The pit whispered her name like a lover. Claire. It showed her memories like film reels flickering in the dark. The slammed doors, the shouted curses, the bruises she covered with sleeves. The night she locked herself in the bathroom with Emily pressed against her chest, whispering "Sure, Mommy's here, Mommy's here." And beneath it all, a promise that made her bones ache. Feed me, and you'll never be alone again. She woke tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, the shape of her ex-husband's shadow still leaning over her. A ghost that wasn't a ghost, but a warning. The air in the house tasted like rust. Down the hallway, Emily giggled in her sleep. A soft, secret sound that made Claire's heart hammer. She rose from the bed, barefoot on the freezing wood, drawn by instinct stronger than fear. The trapdoor was open again. The board she'd nailed down was splintered at the hinges, peeled back like a mouth forced wide. The draft pushed up into her face, warm, wet, almost tender. Emily was still in her bed this time, but her hand dangled down over the edge, fingers twitching like they were stroking something just out of sight. Claire crouched low, her own palm hovering above her daughter's. The pit's breath brushed her skin, and in that blackness, she swore she saw shapes moving. Limbs. Roots. Memories. A voice rose up, soft as a lullaby. Tell me your hunger. Feed me your hurt. Claire felt her mind slide, back to nights spent counting bruises, to the taste of blood in her teeth when she bit her tongue to stay quiet. The pit knew. It dredged her secrets up like bones from the mud, laid them bare. I can make you whole. I can keep her safe. Just one gift more. Claire wanted to scream. Instead, she pressed her lips to Emily's hand, pulled it gently back onto the bed, tucked it under the blanket. Her daughter sighed in her sleep, a sound so small, so human, so hers. Then Claire whispered into the hole, "You can't have her." The pit exhaled a laugh that wasn't a laugh at all, just a wet, hollow promise. Then give me something else. When dawn broke, the house felt smaller, closer, colder. Claire sat by Emily's bed, watching her sleep, wondering how much of herself she'd have to tear out and throw down that hole to keep her daughter's dreams safe. Outside, the snow kept falling, a hush that buried everything but the sound of the trapdoor, breathing beneath the boards. Chapter 6. Old Bones. Claire waited until Emily was at school again. This time she stood at the bus stop with her daughter until the doors folded shut, watching her through the glass until the bus vanished behind the rise. She felt like she was sending Emily away from a war zone that nobody else could see. When the bus was gone, she didn't go back inside. She didn't trust herself to open that front door again, to hear the boards creak like ribs cracking, to feel the floor breathe under her feet. Instead, she wrapped her coat tight around her and trudged through the knee-deep snow, across the frozen field toward the tiny crooked farmhouse on the horizon. Mrs. Pritchard's place looked dead at first glance, windows clouded with frost, chimney leaning like an old man's spine. But when Claire knocked, the door swung open before she even lowered her fist. The old woman stared at her through the crack, grey hair pulled back now, eyes sharp as a nail. "You came too late last time," Mrs. Pritchard said. "You come too late again today." Claire pushed past the door before the woman could shut it. "Tell me what it wants." Mrs. Pritchard's living room was cluttered with relics, yellowed newspaper clippings pinned to the walls, curling Polaroids tucked behind dusty glass jars. Animal skulls sat in a line along the mantel. Raccoon, fox, something bigger she didn't want to guess at. Every surface smelled of old smoke and stale tea. "Sit," Mrs. Pritchard said. * before your legs give out. Claire Saturday. Her knees trembled so badly she thought she might collapse anyway. Mrs. Pritchard shuffled to a battered cabinet, rummaged inside, and pulled out a box, battered metal, painted once but flaking to rust. She dropped it onto the table between them with a heavy thunk. Dust rose around it like ash. "You want to know what you're living on top of," she said. Open it. Claire lifted the lid. Inside lay scraps of brittle newspaper, Polaroids curled with age, scraps of yellowing paper covered in spidery handwriting. "The hollow guest," Mrs. Pritchard murmured, as if reading Claire's thoughts. That's what the old ones called it. Or the mouth below. My granddad told me the first families here dug their wells too deep. Hit something that shouldn't be dug. It started with small things. Animals gone missing, children's voices in the walls. Claire's mouth was dry as she picked up a photo, black and white, grainy, the old farmhouse, her farmhouse, before the extension that held Emily's room even existed. A group stood in front of it. Men in dark coats, women with children clutched to their skirts, all staring at the camera like they'd been caught mid-prayer. What happened to them? Mrs. Pritchard sat across from her, bony hands folded on the table. They fed it. Thought they could keep it sated. Chickens at first, then dogs, then... Her voice cracked. She looked away, blinking hard. "And you?" Claire asked, her voice rising. Why do you stay here? Why don't you just leave? The old woman gave her a look full of something like pity. I tried. Went to the city once, 30 years back. Couldn't sleep a single night. It whispered through the walls. It follows you, girl. If you wake it up good and proper, it don't stay put. She tapped the photo in Claire's hand. That cult, they thought they were shepherds, keeping it penned. But the more they fed it, the hungrier it got. Swallowed them up in the end. The land changed hands a dozen times. People vanish, house rots, then some poor girl looking for cheap rent moves in with her baby. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes softened then, not pity now, but sorrow. You didn't know, but now you do. Claire felt tears sting her eyes. She hated them, hated how weak they made her feel. How do I stop it? Tell me how to close it. Mrs. Pritchard leaned closer. The old woman smelled of peppermint lozenges and cold ashes. You don't close it, child. You only starve it, or bury it so deep it can't find you. Bury it how? Mrs. Pritchard's thin lips twitched into something like a smile, brittle as frost. Burn the house. Salt the earth. Walk away. Don't look back. Claire shook her head. I can't just burn my home down. Mrs. Pritchard cackled, a dry, humorless rasp. It ain't a home if it's waiting to eat you alive. Claire pressed her hands over her face, feeling the cold seeping through her skin. It wants Emily, but it can't have her. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes sharpened. Then it'll take you instead. Or worse, Make you hand her over yourself and think you're saving her. She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a hiss. You understand, girl, it don't just feed on flesh. It feeds on want. On all the dark places you pretend ain't there. It'll dig in your head until you think the only way out is down there in the dark. Claire pushed the box away so hard the table rattled. No. I won't let it. I won't. Mrs. Pritchard didn't argue. She just rose, shuffled to the door, and pulled it open to the snow-blind yard. Then run. Or burn it. Those are your only roads. Pick one before it picks for you. Claire stepped out into the wind again, the cold burning the inside of her nose, the taste of old ash on her tongue. Behind her, the door slammed shut. Far across the field, the school bus was just turning the bend back toward the farmhouse. And for the first time, Claire wondered, did Emily even get on that bus today? Or had the pit whispered something better to her instead? She ran. The snow swallowed her footsteps behind her. Chapter 7. The ultimatum. The sun was gone by the time Claire stumbled back through the fields. Snow had begun to fall again, thick flakes drifting down like ash. Her jeans were soaked to the knee, her breath sharp in her lungs. The farmhouse loomed ahead, hunched low under the weight of winter. A single light glowed behind Emily's window. Claire's heart thudded at the sight. Hope and dread knotted tight in her throat. She fumbled the front door open with numb fingers. The smell hit her first, the familiar cold draft, but now laced with something sickly sweet, like rotting apples mixed with damp earth. The house felt alive around her, the walls groaning as if they were listening. Emily. Her voice echoed up the stairs. No answer. She climbed slowly, one hand trailing the banister, half expecting to feel something reach back. At the top, Emily's bedroom door stood wide open. The light inside was soft, the bedside lamp, its glow too warm for how cold the air was. Emily sat cross-legged on her bed, arms wrapped around her knees. Her stuffed rabbit lay on the pillow beside her, its stitched grin turned toward the trapdoor, which gaped wide again, the dresser shoved aside like it weighed nothing. The draft rolled over Claire's feet. It felt stronger now, almost pulling at her ankles as if the pit were breathing her in. Emily. Claire stepped closer, her voice trembling. Why did you open it? Emily didn't look at her. Her eyes were fixed on the darkness beneath the floor. He asked me to, she said softly. He said it was time. Claire knelt beside the bed, forcing herself to touch her daughter's cold hands. It's not time for anything, Em. We are leaving. We are gonna pack up your things and go somewhere warm. Somewhere safe. Emily's gaze finally shifted to her mother. Her eyes were glassy, distant, a mirror reflecting something that wasn't entirely hers anymore. He says if we leave, he'll follow. He says you promised. Claire's stomach turned. What did I promise, sweetheart? Tell Mommy. Emily's fingers twitched around her knees. He says you promised you'd keep me safe. That you'd do anything. Claire squeezed her daughter's hands so tightly her own bones ached. And I will. But not like this. Do you hear me? Not like this. The pit below seemed to inhale, a rush of warm, fetid air that made the candle on the nightstand flicker. A voice rose from the hole, not words at first, but shapes in Claire's mind, flashes of memory, guilt pressed into images. Her ex-husband's face, the slammed doors, the helpless hush-hush-hush when Emily cried behind a locked bathroom door. And then the voice found language, soft as breath. One gift more. One hurt buried. Then you keep her. Forever. Claire pressed her palms to her temples. No. No. You can't have her. Not her. The voice slid around her thoughts like oil. You. Give me your hunger. The parts you hate. The parts you hide. Feed them to me. Emily watched her mother without blinking. She tilted her head, the way she did when she was small and trying to understand an adult's lie. Mommy, she whispered. He says it won't hurt. You'll just be quiet. Like when Daddy yelled. Remember? Claire felt something crack inside her chest, an old splintered place she'd patched over with new paint and new towns and cheap rent. She forced herself to her feet. Her voice shook but didn't break. Emily, get your coat. Emily didn't move. He says you can't run. He'll come too. He says you belong to him now. Claire crossed to the closet and dragged out Emily's little winter coat, blue with pink fleece, the one she'd bought with the last scrap of her Christmas bonus. She held it out. Please, baby. For Mommy. Put it on. Emily's eyes flicked to the pit one last time. The draft pulsed against their legs like a heartbeat. Then, slowly, she slid off the bed and let Claire pull the coat around her shoulders. Claire zipped it up, her hand shaking so badly she nearly jammed the zipper. Where are we going? Emily asked softly. Claire didn't look at the hole, didn't look at the dresser splintered in the corner. She just pulled her daughter close, burying her face in Emily's hair, breathing in the last clean thing left in the house. Away, she said. As far away as we can. But as they stepped out into the hallway, the floorboards moaned under their feet, and deep below, the pit laughed. The sound was wet and hollow, rolling through the beams and walls. Behind them, the draft rose like a sigh that wouldn't end. Chapter 8. Descent. They didn't make it to the car. Claire gripped Emily's hand so tight the child whimpered once, but Claire didn't loosen her hold. She dragged her down the staircase, through the cold hallway where the wallpaper peeled like old skin, the front door yawning wide to the black yard beyond. Outside, the snow had stopped. The yard lay buried under a crust of ice that glittered under the sickle moon. The car squatted at the far end of the drive, half buried by drifting snow, the only piece of the world Claire trusted to carry them far from this place. She shoved Emily's tiny boots into the snow, urging her forward. One step at a time, baby. Just one step at a time. But the cold air didn't feel like escape. It felt closer. Heavy. Watching. Claire's breath frosted out in ragged gasps. She fumbled the keys from her pocket, fingers so stiff she nearly dropped them. Behind her, Emily tugged at her sleeve. Mommy. Claire didn't stop. Keep moving, honey. Almost there. Emily's voice floated up through the wind. Soft. Strange. He says you can't leave him alone. Claire stopped walking. Her boots sank through the ice crust with a soft crunch that sounded too loud. The keys jingled in her shaking hand. What did you say? Emily's mitten pointed back at the farmhouse. The front door was still open, the hallway beyond yawning like a throat. He's sad, Emily said. Her breath curled from her lips in a white ribbon. He says you left your hurt behind. Claire's vision blurred. She could still feel it, the trapdoor under her feet, the board swollen with cold and secrets, the draft that hissed promises she hated but almost believed. Something shifted under the snow, a hollow thump deep beneath the frozen ground, as if the pit had dug roots that now spread under the whole yard. The wind carried the whisper up through the drifts. One gift more. One memory. One truth buried. Claire dropped to her knees, the keys falling into the snow. Emily stood beside her, small mittened hands dangling at her sides, rabbit tucked under one arm. The child's breath was calm, unworried. Claire pressed her palms to her temples. The wind stung her eyes, but it couldn't wash away what she heard. It showed her the kitchen again, her old kitchen, the shouting, the slammed fists, the way she'd hidden the bruises with foundation she couldn't afford. It showed her the hospital after, the pitying nurses who whispered behind the curtain. It showed her the last promise she'd made, cradling Emily while her husband screamed through the door. Mommy will never let him take you. Mommy will do anything. The pit's voice found her through the frozen ground. You did not bury him. You buried you. Bring it back to me. Feed me your shame. Feed me your fear. I will keep it. I will keep her. Claire lurched to her feet, dragging Emily by the arm back through the snow. The car keys were gone now, buried somewhere in the drift. She didn't care. She'd run if she had to, barefoot through the woods, across the frozen fields, carrying her daughter like she should have done years ago. Emily's small voice floated behind her, soft and unafraid. Asterisk, he says he'll follow us, Mommy. Claire turned, hair whipping across her eyes. She squeezed Emily's shoulders so hard the child gasped. He can't have you, Claire hissed. Asterisk, do you hear me? He can't. Emily tilted her head. For a moment, she looked so old. Older than Claire had ever been. The wind rose behind her, howling through the empty door. Then you have to feed him, Mommy. The ground under Claire's boots shifted. A hollow echo, like something vast rolling over in its sleep. Her mind splintered. One piece wanted to run, grab Emily and never look back. Another piece wanted to turn around, to go back through that door, down the hallway, up the stairs, and kneel. She heard herself whisper, "One gift more." Snowflakes drifted between them, fragile, weightless. Emily reached out, brushing one from her mother's cheek with a mitten. Asterisk, it's okay, Mommy. He says you'll feel better when you're empty. Claire's breath caught. The wind howled. The farmhouse door banged once, then swung wide open, a gaping wound spilling warm, rank air into the cold night. The draft kissed her ankles even here, 50 feet from the door. It wanted her. And deep down, a piece of her wanted the wanting to stop. Claire gathered Emily into her arms, lifting her clear of the snow. Her lips pressed against her daughter's forehead, skin so warm it made the wind feel colder. She turned back to the house. Inside, the trapdoor waited, black mouth open, whispering her name like forgiveness. Chapter 9. The bargain. Claire stood in Emily's room, the trapdoor yawning wide before her like a black wound in the floorboards. The air smelled thick, rotten earth, wet stone, and something darker, almost sweet. Her hands trembled as she pulled the dresser fully aside, the wood scraping against the floor in protest. She knelt at the edge, staring into the pit's unfathomable depths. The darkness moved, slow, liquid, alive. A low hum vibrated up through the boards, threading into her bones, threading into her mind. One gift more, the voice whispered, silky and terrible. One truth, one hurt, one memory buried deep. Claire swallowed hard. The weight of every secret she tried to hide pressed against her chest. The fear, the shame, the night spent silencing herself so Emily could sleep safe. The bruises she'd worn like armor, the promises broken beneath closed doors. Feed me, it breathed. And you keep her. Her fingers curled into fists. She wanted to scream, to run, to rip the floorboards free, but the pit held her in place like roots. The darkness tugged at her soul, promising relief from the ache inside. A single tear slid down her cheek. Feed me your hunger, it said. Feed me your want. You are empty, Claire. Fill me, and you will be whole. She closed her eyes. Images flashed, the hospital room where she'd first held Emily, the smile that had saved her, the weight of a past that still dragged her down. The voice slid inside her, warm as fire. Give me your pain. Give me your fear. I will keep it safe. I will keep her safe. A scream clawed up from her throat, raw, shattered. She opened her eyes and lunged forward, hands trembling as they reached toward the pit. The darkness pulsed, waiting. A breath, a heartbeat. Claire pressed her palm to the rotten wood, willing herself to let go. Then, a small hand slipped into hers. Mommy. Emily's voice, soft and real. Claire froze, her breath catching. She looked up into her daughter's eyes, wide, shining, innocent. I'm right here, Emily whispered. You don't have to be scared. In that moment, the pit's pull wavered, a flicker of doubt, a crack in the darkness. Claire pulled Emily close, feeling the warmth of her skin, the steady beat of her heart. No, Claire said, voice fierce. You don't get her. Not ever. The pit roared, a sound like breaking bones and howling wind, but Claire held fast. She reached into the darkness and slammed the trapdoor shut with all her strength. Nails bit into wood. The seal held, trembling, but unbroken. For a long moment, only silence. Then, the house exhaled. The draft died. The weight lifted. Claire cradled Emily in her arms, tears spilling freely. The pit still waited beneath the floor, silent but watching, but tonight, she had won. Tomorrow would come. Tomorrow, the fight would continue. But for now, she was whole. And Emily was safe. Chapter 10. The light above the sun rose weakly over the frozen fields, casting pale light through frosted window panes. Claire sat on the porch steps, the cold biting into her skin, but she didn't care. The house behind her stood silent, its secrets locked away beneath layers of splintered wood and whispered promises. The pit was quiet. For now. She'd called Mrs. Pritchard the night before, her voice raw but steady. The old woman's instructions had been simple but brutal. Burn the house. Salt the earth. Walk away. Claire hadn't wanted to believe it. Not after everything she'd fought for. Not after the memories buried in these walls, the life she tried to rebuild for Emily. But the pit demanded a price, one she could no longer pay with silence and fear. Inside, Claire gathered everything she could: papers, old furniture, the boxes of belongings that felt more like chains than keepsakes. She stacked them in the living room, a pyre to the past. Emily watched silently, her small face pale but calm. She clutched her rabbit tight, the same one the pit had wanted to claim but never touched. "Are you scared, Emily?" Claire asked. The girl shook her head. "No." He said it's time to go. Time to be free. Claire lit the match with trembling hands. The flame caught instantly, a hungry spark that licked at the dry wood. Smoke filled the room fast, curling toward the ceiling like dark fingers. The house groaned, the sound not of old wood settling, but of something waking, something angry. She led Emily outside just before the flames burst through the windows, lighting the cold morning with wildfire. Outside, Claire spread salt in a thick line around the foundation, tracing a ring of protection in the frozen earth. The crystals sparkled like broken glass, a boundary between what was and what must never be again. She stood at the edge of the circle, holding Emily close. Behind them, the house burned, black smoke twisting into the sky. For a long moment, they just stood, watching the light devour the dark. The pit was silent. Then, somewhere deep beneath the ground, a low rumble shook the frozen earth. The ground shifted, but the salt held firm. Claire closed her eyes, feeling the weight lift from her chest. She opened them again. The sky was brightening. A single crow called out, sharp and clear. Claire kissed Emily's forehead, brushing snowflakes from her hair. "We are free," she whispered. "We are finally free." The house would be gone by nightfall, and with it, the pit's hunger. Claire knew the scars would remain, in the house they'd lost, in the memories they carried, in the quiet moments when shadows flickered just beyond sight. But for the first time since they arrived, she believed they could be whole again. Above them, the light broke through the clouds, pure, cold, unyielding. The pit was buried. And so was the past. End of the story.